Today we're going to analyze Jada Pinkett Smith's interview with Hoda Kotb. Greg, what's tell us about the videos we're going to watch?
Yeah, I don't think you need much more description than that.
No, right?
How does this grab you being back here where it all began?
Yeah.
Jada met me at her old high school, the Baltimore School for the Arts, where she first appeared on stage and hoped to make acting the focus of her life. Do you remember being up on this stage?
Oh, do I?
What did you do up there?
So much. I remember choreographing a piece.
I picture little Jada up on the stage.
Oh.
I can see it.
Wreaking havoc. I was wreaking havoc all through this school, all on this stage, you know? It's good times. Yeah. I did a lot of growing up here.
And here is where she hit it off with a kid named Tupac Shakur, who was then living in Baltimore. So this place is also significant because this is where you met Tupac.
Pac was new. It was my sophomore year. And he looked over and he saw me and he just targeted me. And he said, "Hi, I'm Tupac." And I said, "Hey, I'm Jada." And we were inseparable from that moment.
What drew you to him? What was it?
He was such a charismatic. He had this beautiful smile. He had a little peanut head. This little peanut head. I remember being at my house on Price Avenue on the back porch, and, you know, he was like, "Oh, you know, we should try it." And I was like, "Pac, kiss me. Go ahead, just kiss me." And so he kissed me, and we both pulled back like, what the hell?
It was not for you or for him.
It was not for either one of us.
All right, Greg, what do you got?
Yeah, this is going to be a great baseline opportunity for us. We hear her elongate the cadence of her speech when she's trying to make a point, choreographing, and then she does a question mark at the end of that, a piece. So we're going to see a pattern that she elongates her words when she's doing it. The other thing we're going to see is that it's difficult to measure her smile as Duchenne or not because she's had stuff done. So those orbicularis are not including because you see a real smile that you can't miss, but those don't engage. You see all the rest of the muscles working. She does a really good eye accessing when she's recalling some factoids where she's talking about a visual cue. And then finally, when she's talking about peanut head on Tupac, look at her face. That's a real smile. And that's how we know these orbicularis oculi and those things are not working. This is a controlled person, but we're seeing something really good right out of the beginning to get a baseline. Chase, what do you see?
Yeah, this is some smooth delivery. Her hands are relaxed. Her posture is comfortable. There's a slight increase in adapters as she sits on stage. You'll see that with her fingers and her hands there. But she's comfortable shifting the volume, the tone, and pitch of her voice. She's comfortable with body narration and using her hands to tell a story and pauses while she's thinking. She's comfortable with all of that. And right when she says we're inseparable from that moment, that's the only weird moment in here. There's postural retreat, eye closure, self-soothing, not sure what yet. In a couple of videos, I think we're going to see that. But the story here, even though it's baseline, is focused around status and mutual agreement, her status and mutual agreement. Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, lovely, because the quality of this footage is really, really good. She's talking about something that she enjoys and something emotional as well. So look at the nose there and how red the tip of the nose gets. That's real emotion. That is tough to fake. So we're going to see that later on and be able to say, hey, there's some real emotion going on because we see the tip of the nose going red, the eyes going red. So that was good to see. Listen, anybody, that great picture of her as a kid wearing those Hammer pants, those MC Hammer. I mean, anybody who wears those, like, utter respect. Good to see that. That just gave me joy. Beautiful smile, she says, and those big, wide those fingers come wide. So again, honest there. Beautiful smile. She's dynamic. She's expressive. She's a trained dancer. She lets us know that. So we know she has physical control as well. Are we going to see that physical control later on? Will we see her not be able to control her physicality? So yeah, just as you said there, Chase, there's some adapters there as well happening around the fingers. Even on a story, up on a stage that she'd be used to, at a place where she studied, talking about something that she enjoys, there's still some adapters in there. So it kind of makes us think, look, if we start seeing those later on, we maybe have to discount some of these as being potentially within a cluster of of deception. So what a great baseline to see.
Today's video is sponsored by Aura. I'm excited for this because I've been using this app for over 2 years. If you didn't know how much private information is out there on the internet about you, when you first see it, it's pretty shocking and maybe a little disturbing. These people that collect all these private things about you are called data brokers, but there's a secret here. They have to take down your information if you ask them to, so they make it incredibly hard to do. So what we do is let Aura handle that for us, and you can do the same. You can let Aura do all the work tracking down and removing all the stuff that you don't want online. And you can try Aura for 2 weeks for free using the link right at the top of the description down there. And Aura does a ton more than just getting your information off the internet. They protect you from threats that you and even your kids can't see coming. And it's super easy to set up. You don't have to go download a million different apps to get all the benefits that Aura has, like parental controls, antivirus, VPN software, password management. They even have identity theft insurance. Everything. One of my friends was over here sitting in this office just a week ago, and I typed his name in, and within just a few minutes, we found everything. Even his anonymous accounts were on the dark web and the passwords associated with those. He downloaded Aura that night. So you should look into this. Your private information should be private. You can go to aura.com/TBP, just like the behavior panel, TBP, right now to start a free 2-week trial that I've also linked down in the description.
Scott, what you got on this one?
Yeah, I agree with all you guys. I think everything we're seeing here is as it should be. She seems a little bit nervous. That's normal for the top of an interview. So initially, in those first few moments, and which we're looking at, she's a little bit nervous. Which she's at her old school. She's got all those people around her she doesn't know, and that's normal. She knows some weird questions are going to be coming out at her, so she's a little bit nervous. But she quells that here in a little while. And I agree, she's a little bit not a lockdown, but I think we're going to see a really good communicator here because she really is in control of the way she communicates, where she looks, how she looks. She takes those pauses she needs. She does everything you should do for someone who is a great communicator. We see a great example of that myth about crossed arms and legs, where people say, oh, if your arms are crossed or your legs are crossed, it means you're not into what's happening, you're turned off, whatever. She's got both her arms and her legs crossed, and she's just as open as she could possibly be for most of this. And I think maybe some of the crying was edited out because you go to a clip and the next thing you know, her nose is red and you can tell she's been crying.
One of those tape replays.
All right.
How does this grab you being back here where it all began?
Yeah.
Jada met me at her old high school, the Baltimore School for the Arts, where she first appeared on stage and hoped to make acting the focus of her life. Do you remember being up on this stage?
Oh, do I?
What did you do up there?
So much. I remember choreographing a piece.
I picture little Jada up on the stage.
Oh.
I can see it.
Wreaking havoc. I was wreaking havoc all through this school, all on this stage, It's good times. Yeah. I did a lot of growing up here.
And here is where she hit it off with a kid named Tupac Shakur, who was then living in Baltimore.
So this place is also significant because this is where you met Tupac.
Tupac was new. It was my sophomore year. And he looked over and he saw me and he just targeted me. And he said, hi, I'm Tupac. And I said, hey, I'm Jada. And we were inseparable from that moment.
What drew you to him? What was it?
He was such a charismatic. He had this beautiful smile. He had a little peanut head. This little peanut head. I remember being at my house on Price Avenue on the back porch, and, he was like, oh, we should try it. And I was like, Pac, kiss me. Go ahead, just kiss me. And so he kissed me, and we both pulled back like, what the hell?
It was not for you or for him.
It was not for either one of us.
Looking at your life, it looks perfect.
Right.
But during that time, you found yourself in a very, very, very dark spot. It was shocking to read how dark it got for you in that moment.
Yeah. I'd been struggling with depression for a long time. So along the way, I'm thinking that life is going to cure me.
Right. Will can fix it, or my job
can fix it. My job. And when I started to get into my late 30s and then hit 40, I hit a terrible wall.
Behind her radiant smile as her 40th birthday approached in 2011, her pain was so great, she looked for an out.
And the suicidal thoughts were just so extreme and were grabbing me.
What were the thoughts saying to you?
You know, not deserving to live, not feeling loved, not seeing light at the end of the tunnel. It just got really unbearable. And you start to think that everybody's better without you here.
Oh, jeez.
I start to try to devise a plan for an accident so that it doesn't look like suicide. And as morbid as it might sound, when I would come up with a plan, it made me feel like, okay, you got the plan, so you're good. So if it gets really, really, really bad, you got your out.
Her plan involved a high-speed ride on Mulholland Drive in Los Angeles, the mountain road with scenic overlooks and treacherous cliffs.
I'm just trying to imagine you driving Mulholland Drive and wondering where's a good spot
Oh, yeah.
for this to happen, and that your kids would be better off. Did you imagine in your mind it would be better because they would be raised this way, or it would be better because I wouldn't be here?
It would just be better. They would be okay and I would be out the way, right? Because you trying to rationalize the thoughts that come. I think about it now and it's actually a ridiculous thought.
All right, Chase, what do you got?
So we have honest behavior here. And one of the ways you can tell here, she's trying not to cry or show tears, and willingness to wipe the tears away instead of letting them fall on the face for some dramatic effect there. Redness in the eyes comes suddenly. Maybe there's some edits there Scott's going to talk about, and some redness in the nose that appears there. And there's 3 types of tears. We have basal tears that kind of lubricate our eyes during the daytime and stuff. We're going about our day. Then we have reflex tears that respond to irritants like dust or cutting an onion. Then we have emotional tears that are produced in way larger amounts than the other 2 types, and they overwhelm the little drainage system. And there's a drain hole. Like even if you pull your eyelid down, you can see the hole. And that's why your tears go into your nose. But this leads to the spilling on the face. And then we have vasodilation. So when we're experiencing some kind of strong emotion, our body releases all these chemicals and hormones. And one of the results of this little cascade is the dilation or widening of blood vessels in and around the eye. And as these vessels expand, they become more visible through the transparent part of the eye, the conjunctiva, and they look a lot redder. And you can see that Hoda is genuinely emotionally affected by this. And she's responding with almost the same intensity of emotion as Jada. Scott, what do you got?
All right. Hoda, when she says, your life looks perfect, then Jada just swallows really hard because I think she's getting ready for these. She knows this is the top and here come the questions. So it's going to be kind of rough because she's never been interviewed like this before, and with such a backstory that was only a couple of years ago that leads up to this. So she knows there's a lot coming. Now, we see an odd head movement and her head shakes. These are confirmation nods. However, the head goes back and forth like this. It's really odd how her head does this and during the confirmation nod. So I thought that was kind of odd. But at the same time, you could say, well, that might indicate some anger or displeasure with talking about this subject, because here in just a couple of minutes we get into something with her a little rough. So, and then we see contempt when she says to live, when Jada says to live, and the sentence is not, and then and not deserving to live is the sentence. And when she says to live, it happens on 2. Now, the head being forward and the contempt and the hard eye contact all suggest anger. From my point of view, that's the way I would say, oh, she looks a little angry, which she would normally be when you're talking about a subject like this. So we do see a blend of expressions here. In the we see contempt and anger, We see sadness and anger, and this is very common. You'll see these blends of emotions as you'll see the expressions that the emotions are making happen. So that's normal. That's okay. But I think it's interesting that we see those things, and quite often you'll hear, which we know differently now, that experts will say, "Oh, the only time you see contempt it is the only expression with that's asymmetric. You see one side of the face go up, whatever." But more often than not, you'll see more than contempt in that. Come to find out, you'll see these blends we've been talking about: anger and sadness or concern, along with the contempt as well. Most of the time, in my opinion, for what it looks like what I've been reading lately, from what's coming out research-wise, you'll see that blend. All right, Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, really interesting. I couldn't agree more. You've got real feeling here. Great to see that nose going red. We don't see it that often, actually. In Japanese animations, it's used a great deal in order to show emotion. The Japanese animators will do a much less in the face and really show some of those bigger emotions by blushing in the cheeks and the nose especially. But it's really clear on this particular subject. Just like you, Scott, contempt on to live, I saw there, and contempt on life is going to cure me. And I see the anger as well. Well, there's one theory that depression is anger turned inwards on yourself. I don't know how accurate that is, but it feels pretty good, feels like it might be pretty accurate. There's other theories around narcissism being contempt turned inwards and trying to manage that. So do we have anger and contempt here turned inwards at such a level to the extreme depression that she's talking about here, existential depression? I think we probably do, from all the signals that we're seeing there. I think the descriptions, the story, the narrative that she is creating there is absolutely honest and absolutely real from my point of view. I wouldn't disagree with the narrative she's got happening there. Greg, what do you got on this one?
Yeah, a couple of really good things here that we don't see all the time. One of them is something I call false cognates in body language, because everybody knows if you have a foreign language and you learn a word that sounds like a word in your language and you assume it means something, then you'll make a mistake and you'll have a false cognate. That happens in body language too. Watch her eyes get really wide, like shock or terror or something like that, but it isn't. It's a punctuation for her. She's used it so many times. We'll see it again in these videos that you could misread that because she's punctuating using her eyes that way. There's also some great eye accessing in here. Before she starts to, and I agree with you guys, 100%, the emotion is real. I don't think if she can do this on command, she should be on stage, not Will. I mean, just because that's pretty impressive to make your nose turn red and then your eyes red. That's powerful. You would have to be really good at conjuring up enough emotion to drive that. She starts with this serious face and she's looking, and watch her left eye get narrower and narrower as she's thinking about the situation. That dominant eye starts to narrow. That's usually associated with negative emotion and how things are going. I think she knows, look, we're working from a book. I think that Hoda has said, we're going to talk about these 9 things, these 12 things, whatever it is. And she's expecting this one. She knows it's going to be painful. That's why you see that hard swallow and almost a chin duck, just a little before she goes. Then as she's asking her questions about coming up with a plan, watch her eyes access back to that memory space we saw in the beginning. She's going back to something real. She came up with a plan. And then she goes back down into this right eye accessing, down right eye accessing, where she is feeling emotion. And you watch people, what I call going down the well, where they work themselves into a cry. None of that, not a bit. She just goes to eye access down to the right and starts to come apart. Then she does that eyes widen piece. That left eye gets narrower and narrower as she's talking about suicidal thoughts. That's residual emotion. When something is going on in us and we are not having stimulus, that's residual. And saw the same thing you guys did in Not Deserving to Live. Saw that asymmetry in the face. There's just so much good stuff. And if you don't think this is real, watch her go. And control, not make a mess of her makeup. She's a professional actor. She's always on stage. But then start to adapt on that tissue as she gets to the point to deal with it. Then they get to this point where they're asking her questions about what she thought. I can guarantee you from my exposure to dealing with people with serious depression, they don't remember what they thought. They have to come up. And you watch her eyes drift off. to the right and go to conjecture about what she was thinking. I think this is one of the best eye movement things we've seen. She's got really large eyes, makes it easy to follow, and she's pretty good and clear in this.
One of those tape replays.
Looking at your life, it looks perfect.
Right.
But during that time, you found yourself in a very, very, very dark spot. It was shocking to read how dark it got for you in that moment.
Yeah. I'd been struggling with depression for a long time. So along the way, I'm thinking that life is going to cure me.
Right. Will can fix it, or my
Will
job
can fix it, my job. And when I started to get into my late 30s and then hit 40, I hit a terrible wall.
Behind her radiant smile as her 40th birthday approached in 2011, her pain was so great, she looked for an out.
And the suicidal thoughts were just so extreme and were grabbing me.
What were the thoughts saying to you?
You know, not deserving to live, not feeling loved, not seeing light at the end of the tunnel. It just got really unbearable. And you start to think that everybody's better without you here.
Oh, jeez.
I start to try to devise a plan for an accident so that it doesn't look like suicide. And as morbid as it might sound, when I would come up with a plan, it made me feel like, okay, you got the plan, so you're good. So if it gets really, really, really bad, you got your out.
Her plan involved a high-speed ride on Mulholland Drive in Los Angeles, the mountain road with scenic overlooks and treacherous cliffs.
I'm just trying to imagine you driving Mulholland Drive and wondering where's a good spot
Oh, yeah.
for this to happen, and that your kids would be better off. Did you imagine in your mind it would be better because they would be raised this way, or it would be better because I wouldn't be here?
It would just be better. They would be okay and I would be out the way, right? Because you trying to rationalize the thoughts that come. I think about it now and it's actually a ridiculous thought.
You and Will had probably more rumors about you or talk about you than others.
Right.
They have an open marriage. They're swingers.
Yeah.
He's gay. She's gay. I mean, a million things were out there.
Yeah.
What, if anything, is true, and did hearing all that stuff bother you?
No, you know, that's part of it. I would say that none of that's true. I definitely can understand why there'd be misunderstandings, but none of it's true.
All right, Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, okay. I think things are going to start changing as we get deeper into some more critical questions. Things are changing. We get that big laugh reaction that comes back, a little bit overly big for me, a little bit performative, maybe. There's disgust starts to happen as well. The flaring of the nostrils here around some of this questioning. A little bit worried about that. She goes, no, you know, and that reminds me of her partner, ex-partner. It's the misunderstandings are easy, aren't they? I'm going to get a little bit confused as we go through this as to what exactly the relationship is. But certainly there's something there of a microculture of her and Will Smith using the same tonality and same words. No, you know, and we'll see that. We'll hear that again later on. So is it microculture to Jada and Will? And if it is, what might it denote? Because when we heard it from Will, we had certain ideas around when he maybe uses that. And it wasn't just about him being from Philly. It wasn't just a Philly. We had lots of comments going, yeah, he just does that because he's from Philadelphia. Well, maybe not. Maybe not. Well, let's see what comes. None of that's true, she says. And then she repeats with a bitter taste in her mouth here. None of it's true. And then there's some side targeting with her eyes and this idea of misunderstandings. Okay, so already it's getting a lot more dense and a lot more confusion. We're on our third piece and a relatively simple question. And it's now becoming a little more confusing and a little more open to misunderstanding. Let's see where it goes from here. Greg, what do you got on this one?
Yeah, Mark, I think this is the question. This is a question most people are going to want to hear because there's a lot of rumor around this couple. And I'm with you. I actually wrote, she does a silent scream laugh. That laugh is over the top without any laugh really coming out of it. And the smile dissipates like that. That's a little awkward, number one. Number two, she's been using illustrators. She didn't at every move, but we're starting to see a person who contains at the moment there's a hot question, and she's very contained. Where do those illustrators go? Well, maybe she's just decided she's not using them. So let's watch through the rest of the videos, because what we're going to find, guys, the reason we do from beginning to end when we do videos is you're trying to see progression and what changes. So let's watch and see. Maybe she just gave up on illustrators. Don't think so. So this is a hot topic. Right at the end, when she says none of this is true, she does kind of a request for approval. And you can see most of this stuff has been worked. So she has no wrinkles or that in her forehead. We're only going to see one larger request for approval with the forehead later in the video, and it's in a very key moment. But here she is not illustrating. She's not making a point. She rambles to the question. Hoda makes a mistake of doing a compound question where you give a person the opportunity to answer multiple questions and they choose the one they want to. And then she rambles and non-answers and says, none of that is true. Okay, none of that's true is an answer, but it sure is pushed out. And at the very end of that, at the very end of the question, she purses her lips in disapproval, and they're very prim when she's doing the comment about when Hoda's doing the comment about out there. The interesting piece for me is to watch Hoda as she's doing this. When she says that you're gay, that you're this or that, watch her hands push forward, her elbows at her side. Well, it's out there now. I can now start to talk more about it. And she goes, he's gay, you're gay. They have all of these illustrators that are making their point. And Chase, you'd call it narration because it's clear what she's saying on this hand, on this hand. There's more than one piece. It's not just illustrating your thought. So there's a lot going on. There's a whole lot of control here. I think what we're starting to see emerge is a person who controls her image very tightly. And there can be lots of reasons for that. We'll hear why a little later, as she's going to tell us in her own words why she controls her image. Scott, what do you got?
All right. I think during that long setup for the first question, when she throws her head back like that, I think that's it is. I think it's sort of planned for a question like that because you want to show that it doesn't bother you. That's why it seems so big and so out of place and so odd, because she throws her head back, and she also has a chin jut in there on yeah right after that. But or before that, or right after that. That's what it is. But I think what's happening there is she's signaling that this stuff doesn't bother her. That's not that big a deal. It's like, oh yeah, I know about that. So we get that the brushing away of those things right out of the gate. Now, the long no, I think that gives us the impression she's actually thinking about what she's going to say. You know, they probably said, look, we're going to ask you these questions or around these topics here. They might not have given her the specific questions. I would be under the impression they did. But I don't think she sat down and wrote out every question, rehearsed it, and came out and started doing it. But I think she's actually thinking about things, or she's such a good actor from that point of view that it makes me wonder if she's actually thinking about her answer or not. Because it's really important when you ask a question to at least look like you're feign the I'm thinking about it part. So it looks like you actually thought about it. And people will take your answer much more seriously, or they'll accept it easier if you look like you thought about it for a second. Not like, what time is it? And you go, well, it's almost 8. Not like that. But if you give a little time, look like you're thinking about it, makes your answer more potent, I think. Now, when it gets to the part about the open marriage, let's see if that doesn't change a little bit as we go on through here, because there's some odd behavior in there. I won't get specific with it, but we'll get into that in a few minutes. Chase, what do you got?
Love it. And Hoda does a great job of distancing the question from herself and distancing it from Jada. She doesn't say, you are gay, you're in some kind of open relationship. She says, they're saying she is, he is, they are. So she doesn't point directly at her, which is a really good tactic. Yeah. And there's what I think is disgust on the face. And just going off of the coding system, we have those two little lines here that are coming up, showing disgust. And there's a head retreat where the head comes back. There's locked eye contact that's out of baseline. This is showing us why clusters are important. But then we hear her say, I would say that's part of it. We don't know what it is. And she puts the accent on the word of. That's part of it. I have no idea why that would happen. But then she says, I would say none of that's true. This is a non-answer. There's a loss of fluency from what we've seen in baseline, which means she's not producing speech at the same rate as she was just a few seconds ago. And she's speaking in these sentence fragments. And then she calls them misunderstandings instead of calling them lies or false information. When people think something is completely false, they tend to be okay with calling it false instead of making a case for the people who are saying the information or giving that information out. She's making a case for them. So something's way off here. And I think all four of us have spent maybe collectively 100,000 hours or so doing this stuff. And I'm still not claiming to know what goes on behind the scenes or what she's secretly thinking, but I do think that something here is really off, possibly a different type of deception where there's more avoidance and withholding than actual verbal deception like we so commonly talk about here. We're different type of deception.
One of those tape replays.
And Will had probably more rumors about you or talk about you than others.
Right.
They have an open marriage. They're swingers.
Yeah.
He's gay. She's gay. I mean, a million things were out there.
Yeah.
What, if anything, is true? And did hearing all that stuff bother you?
No. You know, that's part of it. I would say that none of that's true. I definitely can understand why there'd be misunderstandings, but none of it's true.
You and Will were talking about it, and me not knowing what was going on, I looked and I said, my God, this guy's been blindsided. What's going on here?
Yeah.
So I'm watching this weird dance go on.
Yeah.
It looks like this guy's being humiliated
I know.
on national television. If viewers got the impression Will was humiliated, Jada says that is not the case at all. She says Will asked to be on the show and knew about Alsina. So he knew about the relationship prior to this.
Absolutely.
And there's something else that was not clear in that episode, something Jada has never disclosed before. She and Will were not just on a break during her relationship with Alsina. They've actually been living separate lives for years. There are so many surprising things in the book, but the thing that surprised me the most, that I actually had to reread it because I said, is this true?
Right.
Was that in 2016, you and Will decided that you were going to live completely separate lives.
Yes.
It was not a divorce on paper,
right,
but it was a divorce. So from the year 2016, which is 7 years ago now.
Yes.
Y'all have been apart.
Yeah.
But in public, they denied the gossip about their marriage and played the role of adoring couple. This interview on Bravo's Watch What Happens Live with Andy Cohen was taped a year after Will and Jada separated.
So how long have you guys been together?
23 years.
Wow. That's amazing. How do you keep it hot?
How do I keep it hot? Maybe I don't know. I mean, I'm baffled, really.
Yeah, right.
So I guess my question is, I feel like you're a straight talker.
I am.
Except you're not sometimes.
Yeah.
So why do that? Like, what was the reason?
I think just not being ready yet. Still trying to figure out between the two of us how to be in partnership, right? And in regards to how do we present that to people, you know? And we hadn't figured that out.
All right, I'll go first on this one. I'm going to skip straight to the straight talker part when Hoda says, you're a straight talker, but sometimes you're not. I mean, what a great way to approach that, because she's not saying, hey, man, I'm busting you right here. She just says, this is great, but sometimes this part isn't so great. Take a look at the veins in her head, in Jada's head. Look how those things pop out. It looks like she's getting ready to, or her head's getting ready to blow out. Now, that could be from her blood pressure could be going up because of that. Something's triggering those veins to pop out like that. So I'd be under the impression that when she's not attacking her, but saying sometimes you are, sometimes you're not, that might get her fired up a little bit. And then the question following that is what gets, I think, really makes things flow, pardon the pun, a little bit heavier in there as far as blood pressure goes. But it could tell us about several things. It could be embarrassment, it could be anger, anything that would make her blood pressure rise up a little bit. And we don't see it. That's the most we see of it in all this series of videos. We see little hints of it again, but not like this. So I think that's a pretty big deal. And whatever it is, if it is a big deal, and if it's not some weird, thing that just coincidence that happens right there with her blood pressure spike or something, I think she must be a really good actress or actor, because she doesn't show much after that about being angry or embarrassed or anything. Her voice tone and volume don't change much, but she does slow down as her diction becomes really, really clear. She's trying to get that point across. And I think this is very important to her, obviously, because it's bothering her emotionally. We just don't know. She just doesn't show that part of it. But the things we're seeing here normally may not set off the bells and whistles for someone who's not into nonverbal communication or hasn't studied body language. But I think for us, we're seeing, and I would venture to say it, the rest of us are going to see a few things in here that let us know that she's fairly uncomfortable with this questioning here. All right, Greg, what do you got?
Yeah, I would say, let me give you my first ones that jump off the plate at me. First of all, her blink rate goes up. Something has changed. That's the highest we've seen her blink rate to now. Chase, you probably counted it, but we got it up there. She says something about going into Jada mode for containment later. I think we're starting to see what Jada mode looks like. Now she's using illustrators. Well, she wasn't in that hot question last time, so this must be a hotter question for her. There's something going on here. There's a good example of her shifting behaviors to fit the situation, which she says she does. She knows she's about to get caught on the carpet for these layers of deception. If you don't believe that, watch her baton with her feet. I can only imagine those shoes are very expensive and those heels are very delicate. And pounding your feet on the floor that way at an angle is probably not good for them. And she's very attentive to her appearance very clearly. So I would think that's interesting. There's a batoning piece that happens. And if you want to see a smile that isn't a smile that looks, foul, stop the video right when she asked the question about being a straight talker. Not only are those veins in her head showing, her smile is not. The sides of her mouth are turned down. Her smile is up, but the very corners of her mouth are turned down. So it's uncomfortable for her, to say the least. Then she's followed by, when she says, I am, when she says, I'm a straight talker, she goes, I am. Then she purses her lips and eye blocks. That's disapproval all day, every day, that you've been called on the carpet for one of the most important things you're doing. They ask her a question that's conjecture. And then when she asks her that question that's conjecture, she does the taffy pulling. She draws her in and then goes, right. First time we've heard that. She's asking her for approval. This so far has been the hot button of all the things we've seen, not the sexuality question. Maybe it's one she's prepared for. I doubt somebody says, hey, I'm going to ask you a question about why you're deceptive sometimes and not others, and you're a straight shooter. That's not the kind of question you typically get set up, but we see a lot of illustrators here. So one of the others is a baseline, not sure which. We'll go from there. Chase, what do you got?
Yeah, y'all covered a great deal here. I'll cover just a couple other ones here. When Hoda is saying this guy's being humiliated on national TV, Jada says, I know, and then smiles, which I thought was an unusual response there. And we've seen her baseline for what sadness looks like and what grief looks like, and that's not it in response to that. And I'm wondering, why is Hoda doing this clapping motion like this? 18 times. I did count 18 times in a row. She claps her hands. And I think that that's probably pacifying or self-soothing, because asking this question is making her nervous. And maybe it's her socially driven psychology needing to just keep Jada aware that she's referencing the book because she's talking about a book and not her own opinion, so that the interview goes maybe smoother. I doubt this is a very conscious choice at all. I think she's just a great interviewer. This hand gesture from Jada is so far away from her normal behavior, but she's a classically trained dancer. So maybe this is a nonverbal replacement for speech, in which case she's using her hand so she doesn't have to speak. And you can see it when the clip comes back up. What I think is fascinating is that Hoda holds her hands open first, then Jada and Hoda separate their hands at precisely the same time, like they had trained to do it, almost as if this was rehearsed ahead of time, or Hoda is cueing her to make this gesture. So after she says, yeah, to Hoda's confirmation of them being apart, we see even more. There's lip compression. There's chin boss movement, which we associate with grief, sometimes shame. And then there's a completely different speech and demeanor. And she's talking about this TV show where she was with Will. There's no team pronouns there. It's all I. Everything was about I, not we did this or we did that. It was about I. So I thought that was unusual. This is one of the most unusual ones so far. Mark?
Chase, I couldn't agree more about the punctuation that happens throughout Hoda's talk. I've never seen anything like that before. Yeah. What does it tell me? It tells me something extraordinary is happening here. You know, what's behind it? I think your theories there are very interesting and probably quite accurate, that she needs to, this is a pointed question here. You and Will decided that you were going to live completely separate lives. This is a piece of deception that they decided on together, which they never corrected for the public. We'll come back to that in a second. Here's what I'd also say is Jada is setting up the logic that if you know that you might be humiliated, you're not being humiliated. Well, that's not logically accurate at all. If you consent to abuse, then it's not abuse. No, it's still potentially abusive. Okay. And one thing that I might say is that somebody who is caring for another human being, if they know they're going to be humiliated potentially, and they also know they've consented to be in that position, they may well try and talk them out of it. They may well say, look, you really actually shouldn't do this. I know you think it's going to be okay for you, but actually I don't think it is. You shouldn't do this. We shouldn't do that. What she's saying is, look, he consented, so it can't possibly be the narrative that people have that I put him or allowed him into this humiliating situation. I don't think that's entirely true. It could be both things are the case. We find out there's a book involved. Always good in these kind of interviews to work out, okay, there's a book involved here, which means that there's a message within that book that somebody's trying to promote. Let's find out later on exactly what that key message is. Listen, I'm worried we're not hearing the whole story, because we get again that Will Smith or that microculture, Will and Jada, happening. Now, many people again might write down below, you know what, Mark, that's just Philly. Well, is it Philly or is it fibbing? Or is it both? Is it Philadelphia and it's fibbing, it's lying? Is this an indicator for this microculture that something else is going on? Well, I think something else is going on here, which is we're learning that we're being allowed to think a certain story and not being corrected. The deception here is not necessarily one where they're putting out information to lie to us, but they're certainly not correcting our assumptions about it. And so, there's potentially, what would you call that, Greg? Is that one a lie of omission or something else?
Yeah, I think this is a combination. I was going to bring this up later, but happy. Let's just discuss it here. What I would say is this is a combination of omission and allowing you to have a false understanding. people do it all the time. If you create your own summary of the facts and they don't deny it, then they just let it stew and boil and stew and boil and stew and boil. Sometimes it's more powerful than telling a lie yourself because the person's already decided it. Yeah.
Totally, because the person being lied to, who wants life a certain way, they make up the lie and you don't correct them on it. And so, as we heard in the last video, misunderstandings can easily happen.
Well, and guys, every one of us who's interrogated has talked to somebody. We know they're answering all the questions. This is the John Nolan and I were talking about the glass pane, right? Where it feels like but you just know you're like, something's missing. And you can't put your head to it till you go back out and analyze sometimes. Sometimes you have to walk out of interrogation in order to be able to do that because your brain is so caught up in what you're looking for, you miss something else.
Yeah. So these misunderstandings, we're in a world where misunderstandings are allowed to happen. I think we're going to find out later on that these misunderstandings turn around and bite somebody in their own behind a little bit later on.
One of those tape replays.
You and Will were talking about it, and me not knowing what was going on, I looked and I said, my God, this guy's been blindsided. What's going on here?
Yeah.
So I'm watching this weird dance go on.
Yeah.
It looks like this guy's being humiliated on national television. If viewers got the impression Will was humiliated, Jada says that is not the case at all. She says Will asked to be on the show and knew about Alsina. So he knew about the relationship prior to this.
Absolutely.
And there's something else that was not clear in that episode, something Jada has never disclosed before. She and Will were not just on a break during her relationship with Alsina. They've actually been living separate lives for years.
There are so many surprising things in the book, but the thing that surprised me the most, that I actually had to reread it because I said, is this true?
Right.
Was that in 2016, you and Will decided that you were going to live completely separate lives.
Yes.
It was not a divorce on paper, but it was a divorce. So from the year 2016, which is 7 years ago now,
yes,
y'all have been apart.
Yeah.
But in public, they denied the gossip about their marriage and played the role of adoring couple. This interview on Bravo's Watch What Happens Live with Andy Cohen was taped a year after Will and Jada separated.
So how long have you guys been together?
23 years.
Wow. That's amazing. How do you keep it hot?
How do I keep it hot? Maybe I don't know. I mean, I'm baffled, really.
Yeah, right.
So I guess my question is, I feel like you're a straight talker.
I am.
Except you're not sometimes.
Yeah.
So why do that? Like, what was the reason?
I think just not being ready yet. Still trying to figure out between the two of us how to be in partnership, right? And in regards to how do we present that to people, you know? And we hadn't figured that out.
Why did the relationship fracture?
Oh, well, why it fractured, that's a lot of things.
Yeah.
And I think by the time we got to 2016, we were just exhausted with trying. I think we were both kind of still stuck in our fantasy of what we thought the other person should be.
Jada says she considered a legal divorce, but could never go through with it.
I made a promise that there will never be a reason for us to get a divorce. We will work through whatever. And I just haven't been able to break that promise.
But you still live separately.
We live separately.
All right, Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, just one thing on this, which I think is really interesting. I just hadn't been able to break that promise. I just hadn't been able to break that promise, she says. This reminds me of Prince Andrew in many ways. Only this element of it. There's some elements of Prince Andrew, which of course have nothing to do with Jada here. But this is something to do with Prince Andrew, which is I was just too decent. It's that element of virtue signaling. in order to win approval and distract from the deception that might have been going on. She's telling us really that she was deceptive with us, or as we've just been discussing, did not want to point out that our assumptions were incorrect because and wanted to continue to live this lie, shall we say, because she's just too decent a person to break that kind of promise to herself or to each other. I find that interesting, and I think we're going to get some more of this virtue signaling in this interview. Scott, what do you got on this one?
All right. This is something that is of the utmost importance to her because she sits straight up. Her hand comes out as almost like she's offering her something. So it's almost like she's gifting her something. I know that sounds cornball, but there's something emotionally where she's trying to open up here and seem to be the most forthright or honest at this point. So I think that's, when I see that, it makes me go, okay, even though they look like they're being honest, it makes me want to pay attention even harder when I see things like that because it sort of sticks out. So this is really important to her. Again, she slows down. Her diction gets really, really clear. And I think she's a great communicator, Jada. And she doesn't get caught up in the minutia of being immediately understood. She doesn't mind laying back a little bit, pausing, and then talk a little bit, and then pause a little more and talk a little bit more. And I think that Hoda is doing a great job of letting her do that. Quite often we'll see interviewers on here, and it drives us more crazy when somebody will almost be finished with their answer, and as soon as they're finished, boom, the person comes back with another question. There's no breathing there. There's no air. There's no time to think or anything. It's just like question. Granted, a lot of things are from the news that we get, news interviews, so they're not set up to be that or to do that for you or for us. So that's understandable. But here, I really think she's doing a great job as an interview goes. I think this is why my wife loves Hoda Kotb so much and I think so many millions of women do, because they feel like it's them sitting there asking the questions. And she looks like any other person would be sitting there as they're asking a question. I think she's looking like all these other people would look, excited and waiting to ask questions. So I think Jada's a great communicator. I think she's under control with what she says and how she says it. And even though these answers may not be thought out to the period of every sentence and the comma between, phrases, I think she does a great job here of controlling how she looks and how she sounds. And that could go back to why since she's been an actress since she was a little kid, she may be used to that, but man, she's good at it. Great communicator. Chase, what do you got?
Yeah, I agree with you for sure. And one part that really stuck out to me this morning when I was going through these, and none of us compare notes, by the way. Me and Greg and Mark will try to chit chat about this when we sign into Zoom to record this thing, and Scott won't let us even discuss it. So I think it's fantastic that we so often agree on a lot of these things. And one thing that stuck out to me here was she says, I'm stuck in a fantasy of what the other person should be. And I think this is common in a lot of marriage issues where somebody falls in love with a potential instead of a person. And she uses the word we, but something tells me she might not be referring to Will here, and that she's speaking for herself when she says we. She doesn't use team pronouns to talk about them. Even on the TV show where she's being interviewed in the last clip, it's not there. And she says, I made this promise. I would never be a reason something. She referenced him and his integrity, like referenced him and his integrity and his promises exactly 0 times, which isn't a huge deal, but it's looking to be more of a pattern here starting to emerge, that it's all about her promises, her integrity, everything. There's nothing about him here and how he wants to keep his promise too. Keep in mind, I don't know the case much about the relationship. The more I would read online, the more prone I would probably be to bias here. So every time living separately is brought up, there's an identical smile that comes up. It's identical on her face. And I'm not sure what this is. If you know the case here, you probably do better than all of us do. And I'm willing to bet you do. Comment what you think that smile might be. Why is there the exact same smile every time they talk about living separately? Is there something going on? Maybe not. Maybe so. Mark, what do you got?
I went, I believe.
That's true. Greg, what do you got?
Yeah, Chase, one of the things I find most interesting about this is even when we disagree about elements of what we're doing, we often come to the same conclusion because we're looking at the case from so many different factors. And it's rare for us to really disagree about what's going on, even though we may not see the same things exactly along the way. And part of that's because we are organisms and we've gotten really good at the pieces we're good at. We're constantly growing as we talk to each other. And I say this to Dina all the time. I think each of us has gotten better as a result of all being on the same team. And it's, for me, certainly been a good partnership. And this is the part I'm enjoying the most about it. So let's talk about one of the things that happens in the very beginning of this clip is beautiful. The great Hans Scharf, and you always hear us talk about Scharf in Interrogation, actually created a thing he called change of scene. And he got more information out of American pilots by taking them out of the prison for a walk, taking them out to the airfield to look at planes. That brings out the best in people. It brings out the more normal in them. It brings out the baseline. So we see some of that in Jada when Hoda's talking to her walking through the neighborhood. When she gets to this place, and I'm with you 100%, Chase, when she says fantasy, there's contempt or disdain in her face. I'm going to call it contempt for the situation or disdain. And then her voice also does that at the same time. She speeds up her cadence and her head gets kind of wooden as she says a fantasy, something different in her baseline. So we want to know, we would dig in more there. And Scott, I love that you said she gives her a gift. She gives her something. Here for me, I'm going to go back to my very original baseline and say she's using her illustrators and talking. So we think this is her normal. This is her talking when she's not got something to hide. She elongates her words at reason. She elongates her words at work through whatever. That is a good indicator. The reason there's no reason that is going to cause us to divorce, period. That means they got some kind of I'm not going to say a contract, but they've got some kind of an agreement. There's no reason for us to split up. We will work through whatever. Those are words that matter, and they're powerful, and they're there. When she does that promise, I'm with you, that chin boss shows up, and that's grief or shame. This could easily mean something egregious has happened, but it's not going to cause us to split up, and we're going to stay a couple, even if we live apart. That could be anything. We don't know what that is. We don't know what's a deal breaker. If, in fact, all is forgivable, which is, in effect, what she just said. And then I'm with you, Chase. I see amusement that erupts into a smile when she says separately. So it's interesting. She starts with amusement and goes to a smile both times. Why? We can't tell that because we can't read minds. But I think collectively we all came to the same place. And, Scott, I think the gift is almost an embedded confession of what's going on. It sounds like it to me.
One of those tape replays.
Why did the relationship fracture?
Oh, why it fractured, that's a lot of things.
Yeah.
And I think by the time we got to 2016, we were just exhausted with trying. I think we were both kind of still stuck in our fantasy of what we thought the other person should be.
Jada says she considered a legal divorce, but could never go through with it.
I made a promise that there will never be a reason for us to get a divorce. We will work through whatever. And I just haven't been able to break that promise.
But you still live separately.
We live separately.
Will calls you up again. You guys haven't been together in years, and he says, come join me in this moment.
Right. Well, the thing about it is that Will and I, we're family.
Yep.
He calls me, and he's like, will you go to the Oscars with me?
Okay.
And she went. It was Academy Awards night, March 27th, 2022. They looked like a committed romantic couple posing on the red carpet.
You look dazzling, he looks dazzling. I do have to ask though, people who would be reading this will go like, but wait, I saw them kissing on the red carpet. What about for people who feel like, man, I feel like Jada and Will betrayed us. They've been pretending. They've been putting on a phony show for all these years.
You know, I would say that there's deep love between us. And I could see why people would say that it's not exactly what they thought, but I actually think that it could be a lot more than what people hope for. right?
All right, Greg, what do you got?
So here we go again. We've got illustrators. They're moving. She's congruent in that we are family, and he called and asked me to. There's a lot of movement. You know, you always quote Vray, Scott, about saying the bigger the illustrators, the more movement, the more illustration we do, the more likely something is true. And then she goes way back to that original question number 2 about sexuality and locks down and gives a rambling non-answer and a right with that left eye, that intake eye really narrowed now. This looks a lot like when she was being deceptive, and she was called on the carpet for being deceptive. And she's a master of non-answer. As she's trying to respond to this, she's looking like there's a baseline for her when she tells the truth and a baseline when she avoids the question. And I think this is avoiding the question baseline. Scott, what do you got?
All right. Here's where things change up a bit. Her cadence speeds up, her voice tone and volume go up. She illustrates with both hands and arms as well as she's answering. But this is something where she feels very strongly about it because she's committed to being married, as she's talking about. You can see it on her. I know there's a lot going on body language wise, but still, I think her commitment, you can read it through this. Now, after Hoda says they've been putting on, talking about how people are talking bad about him, she says they've been putting on a phony show for all these years. We see a giant micro expression of pursed lips. Giant and micro expression don't go together, but it's so pronounced if you know what to look for, which we hopefully have relayed that what to look for. It's just where her mouth purses just a little bit. Sometimes it's really quickly, sometimes it's really big. But in a micro expression, as far as micro expressions goes, I think that's what this is, but I think it's really big too. I guess they could be this big and still be micro. But this usually indicates disagreement. And sometimes that person is large and sometimes it's small. And like I said before, sometimes it's really quick. Sometimes it'll last for a little while, depending on what the subject is and who you're talking to. But I didn't think she liked hearing about being thought of as a liar. So, and there's a big difference in the use of the word can and the word could in her reply. Because Jada says, I could see why people would say that. Or she says, I could see why people would say that, not I can see why they would say that. Now, the word in this phrase is important because it lets us know, in my opinion, she strongly disagrees with this statement. Because, in other words, she says she could say, I could see it if I wanted to. That's what I think she's saying. If you back channel this psychologically, I think that's what's happening. All right, Chase, what do you got?
Yeah, totally agree. Y'all made me cross out most of my stuff here, but
you got me too.
Your point about could, she says it again in this clip. She says, I actually think that it could be a lot more than what people hope for. That's an answer. She's hinting and goes immediately back to vague, foggy, indirect language, which is strongly indicative of not necessarily deception, but certainly some concealment and avoidance and self-preservation there. That's all I got. And Mark, what do you got?
Thank you. I'm just going to double down on what you were pointing towards there. Look, there's an idea here of betrayal, which is that's a big word to use, and Hoda, lays it down. Betrayal of the public, a phony show, as if shows aren't to an extent phony. I'm not saying we've got a phony show, but obviously, there's elements that within what we do, which is not absolutely, accurate. You don't get to see everything. Okay. You don't get to see what's over there and over there. Okay?
I'm wearing gym shorts right now.
Exactly. You phony, you utter phony, you. So look, obviously there is concealment within show business for sure. But is that betrayal? Okay, this is a beautiful classic piece of spin. Let me unwind it for us. She says, not what people thought. Well, that idea of not what people thought, the reality is it wasn't what people were led and left to believe. There's no thinking involved. They were led into an idea and they were left to sit in that idea. There was no correction of that. And Chase, to your point, it could be a lot more than what they would hope for. This is suggesting that there is merit to this lie, that within being left to believe something that isn't accurate, there's an intrinsic merit to that. Well, that can be true. Some lies have some real intrinsic merit to them. Some lies are good to produce. They do more good than they do harm to certain people. Other people, maybe not so much, but to certain people, they do a lot of good. The spin here is that the deep love, so she's suggesting there's a deep love that is more than what people were hoping for, and that these two, Will and Jada, share a deep love which has more merit than the romantic love that people were hoping for and had been led and left to believe. Now, that may well be true, but now you're going to have to convince us of that. Now you've got to lay down the evidence to say there is a deep love rather than a romantic love, and the deeper love is always more merit. It has more merit than the romantic love. It's a nice thought. It's a good piece of spin. It may well be true, but now, okay, let's have more videos and now prove that to be true. Because if you can prove that to be true, and we believe in that as well, then maybe you turned the public representation of yourself around, which I think is what this may well all be about. And why not? Why not? You know, she's got a business to run, which is the business of herself, and she deserves to be able to protect it, that business, like any other business can. Whether we believe it or not, that's a whole other job.
One of those tape replays.
Will calls you up again. You guys haven't been together in years, and he says, come join me in this moment.
Right. Well, the thing about it is that Will and I, we're family.
Yep.
He calls me, and he's like, will you go to the Oscars with me?
Okay.
And she went. It was Academy Awards night, March 27th, 2022. They looked like a committed romantic couple posing on the red carpet.
You look dazzling. He looks dazzling. I do have to ask, though, people who would be reading this will go like, but wait, I saw them kissing on the red carpet. What about for people who feel like, man, I feel like Jada and Will betrayed us. They've been pretending. They've been putting on a phony show for all these years.
You know, I would say that there's deep love between us. And I could see why people would say that it's not exactly what they thought, but I actually think that it could be a lot more than what people hope for, right?
So in 2022, Jada just hoped for the best.
It's just like, hopefully he'll play nice, you know? I didn't really see any reason why he wouldn't, since after the 2016 Oscars, he reached out and apologized for what he had said, and we hadn't talked since.
Okay, so you're sitting there, and apparently Chris Rock is going off script. He's just doing what Chris Rock does, and he makes a crack about you.
A crack that hit a nerve. Jada struggled for years with alopecia, which causes hair loss. And with millions watching around the world, Chris referred to Demi Moore's shaved head in the movie G.I. Jane.
Jada, I love you. G.I. Jane 2, can't wait to see it. All right?
At first, Will laughed, but not Jada.
I could tell it bothered you. You did an eye roll. Like,
right. Yeah, and I did that eye roll not so much for me, and I think this is really important, but the fact that there could be a jab at alopecia. And I was thinking about everyone else that suffers from alopecia and shame, that it was going to be okay to make a joke about a condition that someone cannot, right? You don't have any control over that. And so I rolled my eyes like, oh, here we go again. And then Will gets up.
Jada says she didn't realize what was happening. She thought it might have been a planned comedy bit.
Because all night through the Oscars, you know, between the three hosts, it had been all this impromptu kind of like
back and forth
with the audience and people getting up on stage and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, maybe he didn't tell me.
Right.
And, you know, Chris is like, uh-oh. Chris is kind of like making light of it.
Jada says her view was partially blocked because Will walked in front of Chris, but millions of viewers did see it.
And then Will swings.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And from where I'm sitting, it doesn't look like Will actually make contact with Chris. So I'm thinking Chris slipped it. And I'm like, oh, this is interesting, you know? And Will turns around. Now, as Will's coming back, I'm like, wait a minute, hold up. Something is off.
Because you know when he's upset,
Yeah,
and
I'm
Will was
like,
upset.
Whoa. And then when he sits down and I look at him,
Yeah.
and I grab his hand, and I'm just trying to see where he is. And then it continues, and I'm like...
And you heard what he said about you.
All right, Chase, what do you got?
This entire video is pretty much a return to baseline. And I think her reaction about the role was explained in a way that she did it consciously. But I think what she's meaning to convey here is that she innately reacted to the comment with empathy for anybody who might also be offended by the joke. Not that her eye roll was calculated based on her estimation of the struggles of women with alopecia or anything. We're saying body narration, clarity of language, immediate answers, and some fluctuation in the tone and volume of her voice here. So we're back to kind of video 1 or 2 where we saw her baseline. We're not seeing anything huge coming out of that. Scott?
Yeah, I agree with you. Dang it, you got that. My first one out of the gate was about her the alopecia thing. But as we covered the slap heard around the world whenever that happened, and now we can see by looking at this video, we can see at the eye roll, he didn't even see that. Will's looking at Chris Rock, and he's smiling. You know, he's like laughing. He didn't see the eye roll. So when people start blaming it on that, they're wrong about that. Now, personally, like you said, Chase, it looks to me like she's that whole thing about alopecia was more of a virtue signaling for the sake of that, which is fine. Nothing wrong with that. You know, she can help bring more attention to that. But I don't think that's why she was. If you look at her face, it looks to me like that's not what's happening there. I think she was doing it because it probably disgusted her when he said that or hurt her feelings. So I don't know. But it looks like she's locking herself down here because almost all the movement has stopped for a little while there. Almost comes to a complete stop. And so far, every question, every subject, she's been illustrating with ease. They've all been very smooth and very big and very purposeful. But things just changed. So her illustrations don't move above her lap very far. And when they do, like I said, they don't even move up past the lower part of her chest, really. So they're staying low, and we know, like Greg was talking about earlier from the race studies, that lets us know, or it suggests a person might be being deceptive. I don't see deception here. I just see she might be placing this thing about the alopecia differently. She may be wording that differently to make her look a little bit better. Not that she looks bad. She doesn't. Just virtue signaling. And then for the last part, we're back to what's normal, like you were saying, for a baseline. And I think we've seen up till now all the things we've sort of seen in this clip as well. And I believe her when she says she didn't see that slap very clearly. I really believe that because everything looks as it should when she's explaining that. And why would she keep saying, I didn't, why would she keep saying she didn't see it? She was maybe brushed it out of the way when he actually probably was in the way of her vision of what happened there. And then one thing that made me sort of solidified this for me was when she was talking about grabbing his hand to get a read on him. Because, when you're with your person and you grab their hand, you can tell what's going on. But the way they react to that, the way they look at you or you look back at them, so she could tell something just wasn't right there. So that part, I think she's full on about that. I think she's being completely upfront about her feelings on that. All right, Greg, what do you got?
Yeah, I don't think there's any voodoo in what she's doing. I don't think she signaled him, go slap him by any stretch. And it's funny, 3 of us, Mark, you're probably going to have it too. None of us believe that she was thinking, oh, poor alopecia victims. That was not happening. You could see it. It was immediate and abrupt, and something caused her to roll her eyes. Let's talk about baseline. We always say baseline means something when a person does something. Look at her roll her eyes here and roll her eyes there and tell me they're the same thing. They're not. Whether she felt that at the moment or not is not material to this because people rationalize after. So I'm not going to panic a lot about that. But I want you to realize that people do things the same way all the time. When I roll my eyes the same way. And you can pick up on it. And that big, large hand movement and stuff that she does to say about alopecia is awkward and not real. It's wooden in its delivery compared to anything else she has done. So that part for me, I know she's probably feeling some, even she knows that everybody knows her eyes were rolled at that point. I'm going to leave the Chris Rock stuff alone because I think there's a couple of pieces in there. She might not have been visible to Will Smith when she was rolling her eyes, but there's certainly enough rigid body language after that he could get, hey, my butt's in a sling, I better do something. Now, did she expect him to do that? It's a different story. We'll get to that soon. But the one thing that makes me think that she may not be 100% truthful is there's suddenly a bunch of you-knows in this conversation we've not heard to now. You know. Why is that suddenly there? Whether she saw it or not, that doesn't mean she caused it. Did she cause it indirectly? Possibly. Not even important. But that body language clearly is different from when she rolled her eyes immediately. And that was about self, not about other people, in my opinion. Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, I can't disagree. All I can do is load up more on it, which is I did that eye roll, not so much for me. Not so much. Oh, so partly for you then. So partly for you. So, what's the percentage? How much for you? How much for other people? Yes, there's a strong possibility that initially the instinct was about you. And then you thought, oh, okay, but all of those other people with alopecia, those are the people, everyone else, she says. And we get a gesture there, which is way out of her baseline. Now, some people might be able to write down below, look, that particular gesture, it may be part of a specific culture to go that big at that point. It might be microculture for her. Yeah, I get that, but it's still out of baseline for her. And so something is definitely up here. I agree. There's some clear signaling of virtue there. Why not? She's got to protect her image for really good reasons around this and look a little less selfless. I'd say a little more selfless, sorry. But that gesture is right out of frame at this point. So it's big. Then comes up the idea of shame. So I think there's a strong possibility that her instinct here was around shame. Yes, it could be her shame and it could be others' shame as well, but a feeling of shame, and in such a public arena, would be more likely to get that kind of eye roll response than feelings about the mass of other people and the shame that they might be feeling through seeing her shamed in such a public arena. I don't think that's the instinct for it. Now, we've interesting enough, as far as I can ever see, we've never been shown the camera angle ever that would allow us to see what happens after the eye roll and after the laughter, and do that couple ever look at each other? All we ever got to see from this footage, and I don't know whether the footage exists, because I don't know whether every camera was capturing footage, or there was live editing and it got edited away at that point. But there has to be a point. Either Will Smith keeps his eyes forward on Chris Rock and internally, having seen nothing else going on, internally goes, okay, I need to go up and slap that guy. And I'd love to see that change on his face. I'd love to see that internal stuff. Or those two look at each other and a change happens. And no blame. It's like, yeah, I totally get it. On every side. But I'd like to see that moment, and I'd like to see what happened there. But as far as I can see, that footage doesn't exist. I don't think there's a conspiracy around that, because, sometimes footage just doesn't get captured. But if it's there, let's see it. It'd be nice to see what went on there. That's all I got on that one.
One of those tape replays.
So in 2022, Jada just hoped for the best.
It's just like, hopefully he'll play nice, I didn't really see any reason why he wouldn't, since after the 2016 Oscars, he reached out and apologized for what he had said, and we hadn't talked since.
Okay, so you're sitting there, and apparently Chris Rock is going off script. He's just doing what Chris Rock does, and he makes a crack about you.
A crack that hit a nerve. Jada struggled for years with alopecia, which causes hair loss. And with millions watching around the world, Chris referred to Demi Moore's shaved head in the movie G.I. Jane.
Jada, I love you. G.I. Jane 2, can't wait to see it. All right?
At first, Will laughed, but not Jada.
I could tell it bothered you. You did an eye roll.
Right. Yeah, and I did that eye roll not so much for me, and I think this is really important, but the fact that there could be a jab at alopecia. And I was thinking about everyone else that suffers from alopecia and shame, that it was going to be okay to make a joke about a condition that someone cannot, you don't have any control over that. And so I rolled my eyes like, oh, here we go again. And then Will gets up.
Jada says she didn't realize what was happening. She thought it might have been a planned comedy bit.
Because all night through the Oscars, you know, between the three hosts, it had been all this impromptu kind of like back and forth with the audience and people getting up on stage and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, maybe he didn't tell me.
Right.
And, you know, Chris is like, uh-oh. Chris is kind of like making light of it.
Jada says her view was partially blocked because Will walked in front of Chris, but millions of viewers did see it.
And then Will swings.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And from where I'm sitting, it doesn't look like Will actually make contact with Chris. So I'm thinking Chris slipped it. And I'm like, oh, this is interesting, you know? And Will turns around. Now, as Will's coming back, I'm like, wait a minute, hold up. Something is off.
Because you know when he's upset,
Yeah,
and Will
I'm
was
like,
upset.
Whoa. And then when he sits down and I look at him, and I grab his hand, and I'm just trying to see where he is. And then it continues, and I'm like...
And you heard what he said about you.
I'm like, oh, okay. Okay. What's happening?
What's going on?
What is going on? Now, first of all, I'm really shocked because, mind you, I'm not there. We haven't called each other husband and wife in a long time. But I'm like, what is going on right
keep
now?
my wife's
name out of your mouth, right? And I'm like, but now I'm really worried for Will because I don't know what's going on.
What viewers did not see at the time, while Oscar clips were being shown, was Chris Rock leaning over the stage to talk to Jada.
And Chris looks to me and he says, Jada, I meant no harm. Now, I'm just out of it because I'm really worried about
And what's Will doing? He's just sitting there?
And Will's still talking. He's like, he's still, because now he's mad because Chris is talking to me. And I go, Chris, this is about some old shit. That's all I could think to say, right? And I couldn't really take in his apology. Chris finishes, and I'm thinking to myself, I mean, Chris is fine. There's, you know, no swelling, no nothing. So I'm still thinking Chris hasn't been struck, but this is not okay.
And then, during a commercial break,
Will's publicist, Meredith, comes out. Meredith says, Chris has left the building and he's not going to press charges. And I said, press charges for what? And she says, Will hit Chris. I looked at Will and I said, you hit Chris? Like, you actually hit Chris? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like,
what?
And I'm like, all right. I'm like, and then I click in and I'm like, you know what? I go straight into Jada mode. We're going to get through this. This is going to be a firestorm. I got you.
Chase, what do you got?
When she says what's happening, she does the same pullover gesture of like pulling a car over that she did in the last video. And she did this to describe being confused at seeing Will's behavior coming off the stage and just kind of the confusion, like what's going on, this pull over. And I know one of y'all is going to cover this. So I'm going to leave it alone. But she says, I'm worried for Will. Chris looks to me and says, then she says, and Will's still talking. Just somewhere off in the distance, he's still talking about. And then she says, this is some old S word. And there's another pullover gesture there. And I looked to Will and said, oh, you hit Chris. Then I go straight into Jada mode. And she describes this Jada mode as being in charge, taking care of Will, and being the guide, the leader through what she calls a firestorm. And this whole thing seems to minimize the agency of Will and her seemingly taking responsibility for him almost in a maternal way. And from what I know, which is very little, there is a weird power dynamic between these two that didn't seem to be healthy. Might be rooted in some kind of insecurity. Maybe there's my thumb right there. Maybe a fear of vulnerability. So maybe exerting control might be preventing some kind of betrayal. There could be a need for power and control in some people. Maybe you see this some people you know in your life. And this could be due to maybe some early experiences where somebody felt powerless, and controlling others is a way to compensate. And codependency might be a cause there. But lastly, I think we should look at maybe a validation through control. So maybe somebody's self-worth might be tied to their ability to control their environment. And I've seen her on this Red Table show with her mother, and you could see this, another microculture, which we've said 1,000 times in this episode. Her mother acts very much the same way, where there's a lot of control mentioned and talked about. I'll leave that to you. Let me know what you think. Greg, what do you got?
Yeah, one other reason people take control is because they have been left in positions that nobody else did anything. And so they become the person who's not going to let stuff happen to them. So the organism doing what made the organism successful. It sounds like her career was partially that. If you watch the whole thing, she says that she was selling drugs when she was young and she was not a great student, and these people pushed her through school. So who knows why? But Chase, I'm with you. Something in your youth usually causes you to be whatever you're going to be later, and you just keep adding layers. What's interesting is, I agree, she does a regulator. Boom, when she does that, we hadn't called each other husband and wife in a long time. She regulates. She pushes her way with that. That her brow actually rises, which I think is a difficult task at what's happening. She has a lot of residual emotion. You hear us talk all the time about residual emotion, where a person will have shock or terror or those kinds of things, and they'll act it out. She does. But, anyone, short of her saying, hey, Will, tonight, if anybody offends me, I'm going to signal you and you need to go out and slap him. Nobody thinks that happened. Could it have been that she did something and he had a bad day and some of that kind of thing happened? Sure. Could all that could all be the way. But there's congruency in her body language when she talks about we have not called each other that in forever. Her brow goes down and she starts using her brow and her tone in a downward telling moment. And there's a narrowing of her eyes and the drawn sides of her mouth that look like disbelief when she's talking about what he actually did. Her chin's up. Her throat's exposed, and she says, I'm worried about Will. People don't do this when they're lying typically. So I think that part is true. I think most of this is true. She had no idea this was going to happen, even if by some body signal that her husband, separated husband, whatever you want to do, felt the urge to go up and do some striking. That doesn't mean she expected it. All these muscles in her forehead, we get to see which muscles work in her forehead because every one of those comes up at worried about Will. And she goes back to lots of illustrators. The last thing that I like the most in here is she does a ton of residual emotion after she talks about going into Jada mode, and she narrows her eyes, looks down her nose at, I got you. That, Chase, goes to your point about somebody's got control. I got you. I'm going to take this. The other one that's interesting is we get to see your eyes actually smile. All the muscles around them don't work as well, but you get to see an actual smile in the eyes. Mark, what do you got?
Yeah. So look, she's trying to play the narrative here of I was the last person to know about this. I didn't see the slap, and I was, then finally at the end, the publicist comes in and I finally find out he's actually slapped her. Let's dig into that in just one moment. But first of all, keep my wife's name out. We haven't called each other husband and wife for a long time, and there is that astonishment at it. Would you see how confusing that is? I mean, do you now know how we feel? Because it's confusing, isn't it? It's like you haven't called each other husband and wife for a long time, but you didn't tell us that. And now you're surprised that he's calling you the wife, wife. Well, can you imagine how confused we are today, hearing that you're not married anymore? I mean, these things get confusing, and we all start doing strange stuff when the story isn't straight, and the story definitely isn't quite straight on this one. So it is full. You're now confused and misunderstanding. He's now misunderstanding because he's now calling you his wife, and you're not his wife. Well, I mean, you are. You're not. I mean, we just don't. I mean, I just don't. I have no idea. Have no idea what's happening here. Because here's what's happening is now I don't know what's real in Hollywood anymore. I just have no idea. I mean, are people married or not married? Which one is it? Is it a show or is it not a show? Which one is it? I'm just not sure anymore. And it seems what we're finding out is the higher up you rank, because this is a queen of Hollywood here. She's sitting next to the king he's about to be crowned the king of Hollywood. And this is the queen. And we know the higher up you are in a hierarchy, the less you get told. And so what we've got is this lovely narrative here that she's the last person to understand that he has hit somebody live on stage at the biggest Hollywood event. But if that's true, why is she so worried about him? Why this talk of she's worried about him? If she thinks it's a stunt, then she thinks it's a stunt. But she knows something's not right, and she says, well, there was no swelling on him. So did you suspect he might have been? So you're confused, aren't you? You're confused in Hollywood as to what is real and isn't real, and he's confused as to should he be protective over you or not? Are you his wife or not? It's very confusing. So yes, she does step in at the end and say, I got you. I'm taking charge of this. It's so confusing and deceptive. Somebody has to take charge of this and put things right. And it seems she's doing the decent thing and is stepping in, taking charge of the moment. Scott, what do you got on this one?
Chase, I think that's really interesting what you said about that red table thing with her mother. Because what I'm seeing here, what I saw, was that we're seeing behavior that's very similar to a mother's concern for a child. And she's using those big circular illustrators. She's speaking really clearly. The movements and cues on her forehead show concern and just a touch of grief. I know it's tough to see what's going on up there because of the Botox. I'm sure that's disguising a lot of stuff that may be there that we're not able to see because of that. And then with her hand pushing down and forward, I think that's her saying in a way, let's stop everything because this is an important statement. I want you to hear it. I want you to listen to what I experienced. And in this so far, I'm not seeing any deceptive cues or anything. When women use that thing where she does this and pulls it toward her, it's like that little closed claw thing she pulls into her middle of her chest. When women draw that to their chest, I don't see a lot of men do this. I'm just saying women in particular because that's the ones I've seen the most doing this. That lets us know that's extremely emotional. There's a big deal going on there from an emotional perspective, especially when there are other cues of concern that we're seeing. This is really emotional when they do this, because I've seen that happen when they're talking about the most important thing to them, and the most important emotional statement of the entire thing will happen when they're doing that little cue there. Another interesting thing to point out here is that Hoda and Jada are matching each other. We have matching and mirroring, and matching is when you match what they say and you talk like that person. You use the words they use, or you use the style of words they use, the vernacular type they use. And then the mirroring part is where you mirror their body language. If they're doing this, then you ease your way into doing that as well, or whatever it is they're doing. And in the first interaction, when we hear Jada say, what's happening here? Hoda says, what's going on? And then Jada repeats that. She says, what's going on? So you can see this going back and forth, this matching, and they're doing what's called the last 1 to 5. Richard Wallace talks about that in his book, but Oprah has perfected that. And that's why I don't know if they study Oprah or how she interviews or whatever, but Jada, I think, would be a pretty good interviewer because of the way she repeats that last 1 to 5. By that, I mean the last 1 to 5 words the person says. Because they feel you don't have to say anything but the last 1 to 5 words, and it sounds like you've answered something or said something. And we use it in interrogation because it makes that person feel like that you've answered their question or you've said something as well. So it's okay for them to keep talking. It's their turn again. So I think they both got that thing mastered at that point, just like Oprah, who's the master of the last 1 to 5.
One of those tape replays.
I'm like, oh, okay. What's happening?
What's going on?
What is going on? Now, first of all, I'm really shocked because, mind you, I'm not there. We haven't called each other husband and wife in a long time. But I'm like, what is going on right now?
Keep my wife's name
out of your mouth, right? And I'm like, but now I'm really worried for Will because I don't know what's going on.
What viewers did not see at the time, while Oscar clips were being shown, was Chris Rock leaning over the stage to talk to Jada.
And Chris looks to me and he says, Jada, I meant no harm. Now, I'm just out of it because I'm really worried about
And what's Will doing? He's just sitting there?
And Will's still talking. He's like, because now he's mad because Chris is talking to me. And I go, Chris, this is about some old shit. That's all I could think to say, right? And I couldn't really take in his apology. Chris finishes, and I'm thinking to myself, I mean, Chris is fine. There's, you know, no swelling, no nothing. So I'm still thinking Chris hasn't been struck, but this is not okay.
And then, during a commercial break,
Will's publicist, Meredith, comes out. Meredith says, Chris has left the building and he's not going to press charges. And I said, press charges for what? And she says, Will hit Chris. I looked at Will and I said, you hit Chris? Like, you actually hit Chris? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like,
what?
And I'm like, all right. I'm like, and then I click in and I'm like, you know what? I go straight into Jada mode. We're going to get through this. This is going to be a firestorm. I got you.
How unusual for Will, a guy who, I mean, on that kind of stage to do something so insane.
Absolutely.
It's totally out of character.
It's not him whatsoever.
Do you know why he hit him?
You know, it's not my journey. It's not my story to tell.
But Jada was at the center of the storm that night, a storm that only played out behind the scenes. For viewers, the show continued without missing a beat.
I know it could look really strange, but when something like that happens, the trauma response can be, let's just get back to normal. Let's just get back to normal. So we were just trying to get back to normal.
Did anyone ever ask Will to leave?
No. No.
Okay, Greg, what do you got?
Yeah, interesting. This is almost like two different people talking here for me, which I find interesting. First of all, she does the sweeping hand move again, but it doesn't look like the one when she was doing clearing the table for all those people. It's just a quick, that's not him. Mark, this is back to where I thought the other one looked exaggerated, and so did you. I think we're all driving that point that this looks different. She's got pursed lips, disapproval. We always say pursing your lips means disapproval. And she's shaking her head vehemently. Nope, that's not him. So, and she says, not him. Remember, we talked about elongated words when she wants you to hear something specific, and she does it here. Then there's a sudden tone change. Did anybody else feel like, who's that person talking? Compared to the first part of the clip, when she gets into that, she starts telling her how things are and how this is going to be. That's the Jada mode I think we're accustomed to. And it might be who people deal with on a regular basis. We can't tell that. But there's two different people you're talking to here. Go back and listen to those. When this plays next, watch her denying and then watch that abrupt shift in how she talks. Chase, what do you got?
Yeah. I think this is mostly honest here as far as behavior goes. So I just want to talk about Will. And I'll let you be the judge. I think his eventual explosive response might be a culmination of a lot of suppressed emotions, frustration, lack of control, and maybe a desperate and unconscious attempt to reclaim some agency and maybe masculinity. Keep in mind, I don't know much about him or the couple. I'm just going off of what I saw on the stage there. But the joke about Jada might have been some breaking point where all of this pent up emotion just exploded. And I want to look at a few things that might be going on here. The first one, and you can tell me if I'm right or wrong or way off, might be accumulated resentment with these years of feeling controlled or emasculated and just kind of built up. Then we have a defensive mechanism. And this is feeling just undermined in his relationship, might be overly sensitive to perceived slights or insults, even if they're unintentional or innocent. Then we have a desperate bid for control in his life. So just by reacting aggressively, Will might believe that he's asserting some autonomy or proving to himself, or maybe proving to Jada, that he has agency and power. And finally, maybe you can tell me what, if I've got one of these, if one of these might be correct, finally would be misplaced aggression. So if he's unable to confront or directly address the primary source of emasculation or whatever you want to call it, he then misdirects the aggression towards a safer and more immediate target. And I think that one is what we saw at the Oscars. Is it Oscars?
Yeah.
Yeah. I knew that. Scott?
Yeah. All right. I don't know. I don't follow that either. So here we're seeing the concern for Will's mental state, that we're seeing that that's real. And the low head movement back and forth paired with that slow cadence is a classic cue of concern we've talked about before when it comes to a traumatic experience. So I think those are all, it's all coming together. She's sort of playing the dominant role here, almost a motherly role in this relationship. And I'll go back to Hoda. I think she's doing a great job of looking like she's into this. She's got her chin on her head. She's totally squinched up and just totally focused on what's happening and everything that Jade is saying. And I think that gives you a feeling of intimacy going on there, because people watching this, and I think that are interested in it, because mostly women are interested in Hoda Kotb. I think they sort of, again, live through her vicariously. They're interviewing her too, and she looks like she's into it, like everybody else would be if they were talking to her, like the average person would be talking to her. So I think that's a great skill and a great tool to be able to execute. Mark, what do you got?
Thank you. Okay, I got a good one. I think, which is, often you'll hear all of us say one of the best kind of devious ways to get out of being interrogated or interviewed is like, I don't remember. Well, we got a new one, which is, it's not my story to tell. It's not my story to tell. I love that. I think that should be used in all kinds of scenarios. There I am, I'm zip tied to the chair. The black bag comes off my head. Greg's there going, why do you think you were sent to this particular sovereign country? And I'm like, Greg, that's not my story to tell, mate. That's just not my story to tell. I think I could go a long way. I think I could go a long way with it. Like, get yourself out of that one. So great to see that. The other interesting part of this is she talks about her and maybe Will's their trauma response to this. Well, somebody just got hit live on stage, and so maybe I don't know enough about this, but I would instantly go, I think probably that person might have been slightly traumatized by this. But what's happening here is the reverse of the victim and offender, which is a classic of a certain personality type to do that one. And we're at the end of this, and so Could we look at where certain things are being denied? Like, I don't know. I didn't see that. I didn't see that happen. So maybe I was thinking it didn't happen. And then, I got this, getting on the attack, getting ready on the attack. And then that reverse of victim and offender. Interesting pattern that we're seeing here, purely in my point of view, in my judgment around this. That's all I got on that one.
One of those tape replays.
How unusual for Will, a guy who, on that kind of stage, to do something so insane.
Absolutely.
It's totally out of character.
It's not him whatsoever.
Do you know why he hit him?
It's not my journey. It's not my story to tell.
But Jada was at the center of the storm that night, a storm that only played out behind the scenes. For viewers, the show continued without missing a beat.
I know it could look really strange, but when something like that happens, the trauma response can be, let's just get back to normal. Let's just get back to normal. So we were just trying to get back to normal.
Did anyone ever ask Will to leave?
No. No.
And to Jada's surprise, she was also blamed.
You became the bad guy. Look what Jada made him do. Jada rolled her eyes, and look what he did. He ran up there and hit Chris.
Yeah.
Poor Will. That's what the narrative became.
Yeah. My honest opinion about that is that narrative had more to do with the false narrative that I helped to create on the red table.
So poor Will because of
the adulterous wife.
Yeah.
Who forced him to go to the table and sit there. You know what I mean? And now look at what she's done. She has the power with an eye roll to make him go up and slap somebody on stage.
The media coverage continued for weeks. Some called for Will's Oscar to be revoked, while others wanted him arrested for assault. Neither happened, but there were consequences. The Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences banned Will from attending the Oscars or any Academy event for 10 years.
Did you realize what this would mean for his career at that point?
I just knew we were in it together, no matter what.
So you were willing to...
That's what it is.
Ride or die.
It's a ride or die thing, Hoda, and whatever comes with it.
Right, Mark, what do you got?
So there's a qualifier there. My honest opinion about that, like we were going to get her dishonest opinion about it. So she's got to make sure that we know it's the honest opinion. We got an adapter that happens there. That's out of baseline for her. Now it's just one thing. It's just one thing with another thing. It's really not enough, but it's interesting that we get a couple of things there. I'm interested in what other people come up with around that, because is what she's telling us, the narrative that came out of the narrative, is that entirely inaccurate, or is there some tiny edge of truth to it, some tiny edge of truth that the public have, that maybe she has some responsibility? Of course, she isn't the person who got up and slapped, but she's part of a unit. She's part of a, or are they? I don't know. They're married. They're not married. They see each other. They don't see their family. They don't see each other. I don't know what's going. I have no idea what lifestyle they have. It's up to them. It's up to them. Nothing to do with me. Obviously, it's nothing to do with me. In it together, she says, no matter what. 2 signals of disgust during that. So again, what's going on here? Tight-lipped smile on this as well. Look, I just think there's way more behind what's being said here. I don't know what it is, because I'm quite confused as to what's going on for these two. But there's way more going on behind this. There's something hidden. Scott, what do you got on this one?
All right, this at the top, it seems like everything is as it should be. No stiffness in her movements or illustrators. With Jada, she's calm and well-spoken. And this is sort of the spot where we decide whether we like her or not, because it's getting toward the end and we're starting to see where anger come out and those types of things in her personality. We're starting to get a little bit deeper in and start making those decisions. And up till now, She hasn't leaned into how strong her loyalty to her husband is. This is where we find out why they aren't divorced yet. And she affirms that she's in it for the long haul. And so I think that's an important little section of the interview here. I don't see any deceptive cues. And once again, she's slowed down dramatically. Her movements are slower. Her illustrators are slower and lower. And her cadence is slowed down a lot. But her voice, her volume hasn't lowered. Everything else. So that makes me think there's something up here as far as not a show, but she's trying to get a specific point across by adding all these other things to it. But I believe if it were true, it were real, the voice volume would have come down as well. Everything else does, but the volume stays up. But it could be a combination of things, and it could be, everything could be just fine. That's just how it looks to me. Because I think at this point, she's letting Hoda know the way things are. She's letting her know that this is the way it is. This is the way things are, without having to go deep into these things she doesn't want to talk about. And I've found over the years, when you tell someone the way things are, and you use that phrase, that's the way things are, it's really potent, really powerful. You can use it in interrogation when you're telling somebody what is going to happen, or something that's going on. You say, that's the way things are. For example, a good example of this, there was a musician friend of mine who was dying, and there were a few of us at the hospital there with him. And this guy had a whole lot of fans. He's a fairly famous person. And as he's dying, this guy shows up. He's not in our clique or our group that should be there. None of us have ever met him before. And he's one of those that sent this guy a whole lot of letters and things like that. But he sort of went over the line a couple of times. And he showed up. And so the nurse came in and said, hey, there's this guy out here and he wants to see this guy who's sick. And so two of the other guys in there that are musicians as well, that he would know, went out there to talk to him. And then one of them comes back in and says, hey, man, this guy isn't leaving. He won't leave. He's demanding that he sees our friend. And so I said, let me go talk to him. So I go out there and I said, hey, man, you're not coming in. This is not the day this is going to happen. And that's the way things are. That's the way it is. And that's all you have to say. That's the way things are, or that's the way it is. And then you pause and don't say anything. No matter what they say after that, you just repeat, that's the way it is, or that's the way things are. That is one of the most potent tools you can use when it comes to situations you're uncomfortable with, or you want to shut somebody down from getting into a subject, I think, which is sort of what's going on here. I think that's a great tool to use. All right, Chase, what do you got?
That's great for parenting, too.
Yeah, good.
For damn sure. So if you watch this whole thing, it's about control. The whole video is about control. And she smiles talking about this level of control. I could do this with an eye roll. Where's the denial about that level of control? There isn't one. Where's the reassurance that Will has any agency whatsoever? There's zero. The only time she's not smiling in this clip is when she says, we're in this together. The tight-lipped expression, which goes back to control, potentially, that we have to do this together and it's not just me. Just weird. Definitely not suggesting anybody's a bad person here, but this is just very unusual. That's all I got.
Yeah. So she starts with a push-pull word. And that push-pull word, or what we might call a qualifier, is something when she says honestly. There's lots of reasons people use that word. If it's part of your normal vocabulary, you may use it every time you start a sentence. It can be a catchword. It can also be distancing space to think. If it's a subject that doesn't feel okay, you might really use it then. Say, honestly, I feel that, because you're distancing from the feelings. And then she does disgust when she does disgust a couple of times. One is when she's talking about the false narrative. The other is when she's talking about being in it for long haul, or the way it is. I forget her exact words. But both those times she shows disgust. That's not good when you're talking about we're in it for long haul and you see that light disgust in the face. And then there's, there's one other place I saw. Then there's that non-smile again. I'm going to stop right there and just say, if you are saying all of the right words, but you're showing the wrong language, wrong body language, that's almost a but you don't know this. Mark, we're back to that. What don't we know? What haven't you told us? What are you allowing us to believe? And Chase, that ties back to what you're saying, and Scott, what you're saying is there may be more to the picture than you know. And here's a whole box of bees that we're not going to open up in this interview, but the time might come. That's what you got to be careful about when somebody's doing all of this kind of nuanced body language, and there's all that hidden stuff going on behind the scenes. They're letting you believe whatever it is you need to believe to let them get to their next part of the story. Is that what's going on? Don't know, but it's odd to have discussed around the false narrative and then discuss around the whole long-term relationship and being in it together. That's all I got.
One of those tape replays.
And to Jada's surprise, she was also blamed.
You became the bad guy. Look what Jada made him do. Jada rolled her eyes, and look what he did. He ran up there and hit Chris.
Yeah.
Poor Will. That's what the narrative became.
Yeah. My honest opinion about that is that narrative had more to do with the false narrative that I helped to create on the red table.
So poor Will because of the
adulterous wife.
Yeah.
Who forced him to go to the table and sit there, you know what I mean? And now look at what she's done. She has the power with an eye roll to make him go up and slap somebody on stage.
The media coverage continued for weeks. Some called for Will's Oscar to be revoked, while others wanted him arrested for assault. Neither happened, but there were consequences. The Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences banned Will from attending the Oscars or any Academy event for 10 years.
Did you realize what this would mean for his career at that point?
I just knew we were in it together, no matter what.
So you were willing to
That's what it is.
Ride or die.
It's a ride or die thing, Hoda. And whatever comes with it. These kinds of moments can do two things. They can amplify love, or they can really make you bitter, angry, resentful, right? We've chosen to really look at this moment and heal.
It is a philosophy that has guided Jada throughout her life, including her unconventional marriage.
So here's just a straightforward question. Why not just amicably divorce? Why not just do that?
We don't want to.
Because?
We love our family and we love each other. You know, it's more of a life partnership. Now, 10 years from now, Hoda?
Who knows?
Who knows?
Do y'all have a deal, though, that if you start dating someone, you tell him? Or if he starts dating someone, he tells you?
Well, you know, right now, what we're focused on, which has been so beautiful, is deep healing. Because of everything that's transpired. Now, what happens after that, I don't know yet.
Is it possible that there would be a full reconciliation?
You know, he's getting old. You know what I'm saying? He's getting old. Who's gonna be there for him, Hoda? It's gonna be me. It's gonna be me.
You'll be there.
I'll be there. That's what we signed up for, Hoda. I don't know what to tell you.
All right, Greg, what do you got?
I'm just going to say one thing. Walk into the person you love today and say, I love you. See how that goes over. That's all I got. Chase, what do you got?
I'll try that and video it, and I'll send it to you guys tonight.
We'll put that on your headstone.
Yeah, exactly.
There's genuine emotional accessing with we love our family and we love each other, but there's also genuine contempt with that statement. When she says he's getting old, I thought that was interesting because I think they're both aging at the same speed, like everyone on Earth. And she uses this as an answer about reconciliation. He's getting old. Will you get back together? He's getting old. So the guy she had an entanglement with, I think, is about 31 or 32, and I think she's 52. And in this clip, you'll hear her use Hoda's name a lot more than normal, I think 5 or 6 times. And this could be a desire for her, maybe some kind of connection. So maybe Hoda, and she's doing this unconsciously, maybe Hoda won't realize she's not really answering any of the questions And I think one thing people instinctively react negatively toward when you saw this, if you're not a behavior profiler, is when a celebrity is pretending to be transparent, but they aren't at all. We don't even consciously really notice it because they do a great job at dodging these questions really well. But we're seeing them dodge, avoid, redirect, and throw out ambiguous stuff in response to questions. And then we just get a bad feeling about the person afterward. This is because there's not necessarily deception here, but there's a person pretending to be transparent, and our subconscious can see that it's not real. So instead of just saying, I'm not going to talk about that, which she damn well should have just said in the first place, I don't want to talk about it. That's transparency. Even if you don't want to talk about it, you can still be transparent about not wanting to. So they continue to be open or pretending to be open and vulnerable. Mark, what do you see?
Yeah. So, here comes the lesson from this journey and return narrative. She's been through the trauma and she's out the other end of it. And here is the lesson that comes, and she really slows down for this and has some beautiful pauses. It's a great performance of the lesson. The lesson is deep healing. And that's very nebulous, isn't it? I mean, I would want to go to like healing of what, where, like, what, like describe it more. Can I hear more about this? If this is the real lesson, if we've gone through this whole interview and you've gone through this trauma, help me understand exactly to what village the water has been restored.
That's right, because this is the part of the character story where it's called Return with Elixir, I think. Absolutely. And there she is. She's going, look, here is the elixir, deep healing. But it's like, it's shallow. It's nebulous. So, I would be saying, let's work on that for look, it doesn't have to be true, but it has to be better defined for us to really buy into this. I mean, even better if it's absolutely true and well defined. So she says at the end, I'll be there, which is, that's from a pop song, isn't it? So that always sounds great, doesn't it? I'll be there. But that's a tough one to trust now at this point, because I don't know what is true anymore. I don't know what is made up and what is true. So I cannot trust that you would be there. It's just words at this point. Not a good end to this interview, I would say. Scott, what do you got on this one?
All right. Yeah, I've gotten pretty much everything. But I think out of all the shows we've done, I think this is the smoothest redirect we've ever seen. I mean, she gets, and Hoda's just like, falls right into it. It's tough to see if you're not paying attention to that every second to see what's coming, every little moment. But I think that's the most pro redirect we've seen. But usually we don't see people who are professional talkers like this, actors and professionals who do that. We usually see some idiot who's, saying he's somebody else, like that little fella with a mask on, and that just got busted a couple of weeks ago for all the things he got in trouble for.
One of those tape replays.
These kinds of moments can do two things. They can amplify love, or they can really make you bitter, angry, resentful, right? We've chosen to really look at this moment and heal.
It is a philosophy that has guided Jada throughout her life, including her unconventional marriage.
So here's just a straightforward question. Why not just amicably divorce? Why not just do that?
We don't want to.
Because?
We love our family and we love each other. It's more of a life partnership. Now, 10 years from now, Hoda?
Who knows?
Who knows?
Do y'all have a deal, though, that if you start dating someone, you tell him? Or if he starts dating someone, he tells you?
Well, right now, what we're focused on, which has been so beautiful, is deep healing. Because of everything that's transpired. Now, what happens after that, I don't know yet.
Is it possible that there would be a full reconciliation?
He's getting old. You know what I'm saying? He's getting old. Who's gonna be there for him, Hoda? It's gonna be me. It's gonna be me.
You'll be there.
I'll be there. That's what we signed up for, Hoda. I don't know what to tell you.
Just one more thing.
All right, Mark, what'd you see so far?
What did I say? Hollywood is a strange world. I just don't know what's going on here. It's not been made any clearer to me. No clarity has come from any of this from my point of view. I'm intrigued. I would watch more, but I would probably expect even less clarity to come from it. Chase, what do you got so far?
Yeah, I agree. This is a masterclass in reading between the lines. I think Jada's juggling authenticity, evasion, control throughout the narrative here. And there's a nonstop pattern of significance and power. And I think we're seeing a pattern also of redefining and relabeling things like entanglements and misinterpretations in the behavior here. And it might have indirectly contributed to the thing that happened with Will, with slapping Chris. And Jada's combination, I think, of genuine vulnerability and evasive tactics kind of highlights this weird, intricate dance, like Mark, you were saying, that some celebrities engage in when they're trying to maintain a public image here. But I think it's a reminder that behind all of these headlines, there's a real 100% human with their own flaws, insecurities, just like us. Greg.
Yeah, I love that, because what we really are seeing is more complex, not a person, but a relationship. And relationships are sticky, nasty things. They're hard to work through and navigate through, and especially when you're at a distance and you're doing things the way they're supposedly doing it. So what we have to do is listen for the negative. What's not there, Chase, you often say. What we heard is avoidance of hot topic questions. And we heard very specific words. She elongated words around no reason, we will not break up, we will stay together, those kinds of things. And if you go back and listen, you'll find all those. What she never said was there's anything that will cause us to split, to divorce. What we will do is we will, work it out. And then she got to that control thing. She covered up a lot of really ugly questions by avoiding answering and by telegraphing what she was thinking in some places. I have more questions about the relationship and what's real right now than I had in the beginning. In the beginning, I thought, yeah, that's a bunch of people made up stuff. But after listening to this and listening to her words around this relationship being like a contract almost, it makes me have a boatload more questions. Scott, what do you got?
All right. Yeah, I agree with you. There's a famous philosopher named Joey Diaz, and his how he explains this is a little bit more coarse, his vernacular. So I'll paraphrase. And he says, all you need is 3 people that believe in you, that are truly loyal to you. And that's all you need to take over a country. And I think that's the kind of person Jada is, if she's friends with you, if she's on your side, because that's what she's talking about here, where she's talking about her husband. She said it doesn't matter what happens, because she said she instantly went into that mode, which I believe she really did, because of where she came from. She came from a rough life as a youngster. And I'm sure there were gangs involved we didn't hear about, and there were other things that were involved. If you watch the entire interview, I watched the whole thing. But she talks about the things that were rough as a child. And I think that's where she learned loyalty. And I think that's what's happening with Will. She doesn't care what he did. She doesn't give a hoot what he's done. She's on his side, and that's the kind of person you'd want. That's the kind of friends you want. That's the kind of friends I want, that no matter what happens, no matter what you do, good or bad, right or wrong, they're standing there with you. They're right behind you going, yep, he did it. And whatever happens to them, they don't care, because they're with you in it. And those are few and far between. If you have 2 of those when you throughout your life, then you're lucky, much less 3. So I think maybe that's why he says 3. So I think she's one of those people. And I think we saw a lot of the personality type of somebody who grew up with a lot of trauma around them and probably involved in trauma. And that's why she approaches her relationship with Will almost in a motherly fashion, like she's taking care of him, like Chase went into detail with earlier. So I think that might be what we're seeing there. All right, fellas, thanks. This is another good one, and we'll see you next time.
Hey, it's Dr. Phil here. Please subscribe to the Behavior Panel.